Okay, so last night I watched for the very first time this nearly full 1 hour long video footage. It's surrounding the 1122 King Road house. It's from 3:30 a.m. till about 4:30 a.m. Something like 4:29 or something. I got the exact. I like exacts, you guys can tell. It is literally 59 minutes and 46 seconds worth of footage. Now, I know some people will say, oh my goodness, what happened to that extra like 14 seconds? I don't even know. I was trying to watch the timer to see what was perhaps missing. I don't know. I got to figure out what's going on with that. But basically, it shows the activities nearby the 1122 King Road house from 3:30 a.m. till 4:30 a.m. on Sunday, November 13th, 2022. The witching hour, as it were. Or is it what watch of the night? The Bible calls that what? The third watch or something of the night? Gray Hughes Investigates obtained this footage. Now, we've seen part of this footage. Idaho Statesman published snippets, and I did notice people on Reddit, other people were like, I want to see the entire hour. I want to hear the hour. I want to just see the whole thing for myself without all these things on the screen or people telling you what you're seeing. You can find those links below. Gray has it on his channel. He'll probably go over it again. I put the raw video. It was like 12 videos, about 5 minutes each. I gotta see which one is short. It was 12 different videos. This 111 King Road surveillance. It's supposed to be from 3:30 until 4:25. So that accounts for part of the time missing, I guess.
Huh?
So each video, some of them are 5 minutes long, some of them are 4 minutes and 59 seconds long. So that makes sense. Several are 4 minutes and 59 seconds long. That accounts for some of the, missing footage, as it were. Not much missing, though, but I know some people will question that. Kind of like the Chris Watts driveway footage. You know how that confused people so much. It caused so much speculation. It confused people, making them think Chris Watts wasn't alone, making them think Nicole Kessinger was there in the driveway with him because of the way that video footage, it was motion censored, but it started and restarted and overlapped. So at some point they thought they saw two people in the driveway. I digress. Back to this case, Brian Koberger. Find the links to, I put the whole 12 videos together. That raw footage is on my Patreon. Gray Hughes also put, looks like all 12 videos together. It's on his YouTube channel all together. I have also included a link to this huge Idaho State Police document I've been reading from. So I'm going to read from it again. And as I understand it, there are no crime scene photos in that document. You're not going to see any blurred out bedroom photos with the, victim still there and blurred out and everything. They've been previously released and they've been published everywhere, like I think ABC or whomever. A lot of people have published those, but you might remember me saying if you watch my previous video, I never published them. I never put them on my Patreon. I never felt right about publishing them, especially after reading what the Gonzalez family, put on their Facebook page. This was well before any lawsuits or trying to injunctions or anything with Maddie's mom, Karen Laramie, attempting to stop the release of more just heartbreaking footage or not hurting anyone. I can't help but mention something that's been, on my mind ever since I read it from the Gonzalez family page on Facebook. I know the crime scene photos, some of them have come out and they've been all over the place. So, mainstream media, wherever else, I don't know. I've seen a few, they're blurred and all that. A certain amount have been published, but after reading what the Gonzalez family wishes in terms of them not being shared and just sharing like the happy family photos, it's really made me think about even more the victims' families and their wishes and desires. So nothing I'm going to display in this video will involve any crime scene photos. There are none here in all this stuff I've uploaded on Patreon. As much as I've gone through from what Pullman police have sent me, I don't see any crime scene stuff. But you know, these surveillance videos have been released. It was eerie listening to the sounds once again of this entire hour. So there's the warped and loud, eerie sounds of Brian Kohberger's 2015 white Hyundai Elantra engine. As he's like, you can see him turning corners and snaking around King and Queen roads. It's one thing to watch little snippets, like, oh, there he is. Okay, he's still snaking around. There he goes, there he goes, there he goes. And there's the DoorDash, driver walking down the street trying to find the house or doing whatever she's doing. I thought she might have been walking her dog, but I don't think I see her walking her dog. I see her flashlight though. It's one thing to watch snippets, edit it. It's a whole nother ballgame to watch the entire hour. In fact, I didn't even watch it last night with headphones. To me, it was creepy and it freaked me out enough just watching it just on my MacBook Pro. Kohberger's there driving that white car. I believe it's him, indeed, driving that white car, turning corners, snaking around King and Queen roads. I think at one point he goes up to that, back road. I wanted to verify his paths. So as I watched and waited, watching that full hour, seeing his vehicle circling the area near that infamous house, he reminded me, might as well hear the Jaws music playing in my head. He reminded me like a shark just circling his unsuspecting prey. And that's the thing of it. Some people were unsuspecting while others got hints and clues and premonitions and Holy Spirit-led intuition, unctions that evil was present, whether it was weeks prior or that same night. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. I couldn't help but think of at least 2 people who literally felt the very presence of evil that night. So we will read about some of that in the upcoming section of the 556-page ISP document that I'm reading from, where at least one woman felt evil premonitions from weeks prior. One woman who used to live in the murder house found it so unsafe and so creepy, she didn't even come back when she was supposed to. Now, she might have been the self-same woman. It's kind of hard to figure out who's who with so many redactions, but she might have been the self-same woman who continued to pay rent for an empty room. You'll hear that coming up. I don't know if it would have been that same room on the first floor next to Bethany. Remember how that room was empty? Might have been that one or a different one, because they switch rooms. You'll see that coming up too. It gets confusing. Different roommates, different times, lived in different rooms. Kaylee wasn't always up on the 3rd floor. I believe she was on the 2nd floor at some points. There were those who felt stuff wrong that same night or weeks prior, and then there were those who didn't feel anything wrong. So in this newly released full, nearly 1-hour video, it sounds like you can hear some people singing at 3:48 a.m. was like, oh wow, where's that coming from? I don't know if that particular sound is coming from the house with the security video, which is 1112 King Road, or if it's actually the 1122 King Road horror house. House of Horrors. It's like people jovial. It was game day. People have been drinking a lot. You'll hear about people drinking all on Friday, all on Saturday. It was game day. Another reason I believe Bryan Kohberger chose around 4 a.m. to make his move. And indeed, I do question it coming up. I've got a long way till I get to some of the Kohberger, interviews, people who talk about him. I keep seeing these snippets somewhere of interviews where Bryan Kohberger allegedly drank wine. Oh yeah, it sure is. I found it. Some stuff you can't find in PDF documents because, the text has been turned into like an image. Anyway, so it does say in someone's interview, we've got a long way till we get to this. This is page 313. Some 22-year-old female, she was in the master's program in criminal justice at Wazoo, WSU. She's in the same cohort, as they called it, with Bryan Kohberger. She was. I want to see about this wine people keep talking about. But anyway, she said Bryan Kohberger had a bottle of wine to himself and seemed to focus his attention on the female server. Wow, so we've got a while before we get there. I don't necessarily want to skip ahead, but we'll see. When did Bryan Kohberger have that bottle of wine? I see Kohberger had purchased a bottle of wine and drank the entire bottle. This outing occurred in October. And someone else noted Kohberger drank a bottle of wine by himself at an October event. We'll get there eventually. I always wondered when I saw people, the scuttlebutt, people talking about Kohberger drinking wine, and people are like, wait a minute, he doesn't drink. I don't know where they got that he doesn't drink. But when I heard he drank a bottle of wine, I was thinking, when did he do this? Was he trying to give himself liquid courage for, the time of the murders? But no, it sounds like it was in October. But I bring that up to say some people are just like happy that night. We know, Maddie and Kaylee were at the Corner Club. We're going to hear from a lot of people who were there with them. Maddie FaceTiming people, all that stuff. People at the Corner Club. People drinking, people celebrating. It was game day. People, just happy, kind of carefree. So you'll hear people, to me, it sounds like them chanting or singing or doing something at 3:48 a.m. And then at 3:51 a.m., you'll see again the DoorDash driver walking down the street with her flashlight. She was really walking trying to find this house. She was like really lost trying to find 1122 King Road. And maybe that was something by design. Maybe it was an attempt, I don't know, who knows, for God to thwart what might have happened that night. And maybe Bryan circled so much because he probably saw the DoorDash driver. He probably saw her flashlight. He was probably like, I got to circle some more and wait till this person goes away. And you will see another person kind of walking out of the house. Now keep in mind, 1112 King Road does not face 1122 King Road. A lot of people mistakenly think they are looking at the house, but the house is behind them. Maybe it's simply hindsight because we all know what's about to happen, but Bryan's car sounds so loud to me as he continually, approaches and drives around near the house. And maybe it's just the warped sound of audio. You know how different cameras or whatever can create that kind of warped sound? But it makes his car, to me, sound hauntingly loud. Perhaps that's why I haven't listened to this yet on headphones, but I know I have to. And I did kind of enhance this audio for these videos, and I boosted it a little bit so we can hear more. But I started hearing strange sounds around 4:02 a.m. or later. I can't tell where those are coming from either. I don't know if they're sounds of distress. I'm thinking, oh, did things start to go down at that point? But it probably is coming from elsewhere because Brian is still circling the area at 4:05 a.m. He has not entered yet. And maybe that's around the time the DoorDash lady has delivered the food and maybe she's out of there. So exactly at 4:07 a.m. is when you start seeing Brian do that 3-point turn we've heard about so long. So Brian does that 3-point turn, and I feel like that's when he makes up his mind and he just goes for it. Like he just goes to the house. And I think I really start hearing sounds of distress around 4:09 a.m. But again, that could just be me in my mind expecting to hear stuff. So I don't know. You listen, tell me, comment what you hear. Listening with, noise canceling headphones probably helps, but, it's scary and sad to think of what was occurring, especially when you let the whole video play and you're just like, ugh. I had to double time it during for my own purposes, I just double timed it, but it's not double timed at all like it was in other publications. You know how they sped it up like 15 times in certain publications? It's not like that here. So right before 4:17 a.m., you'll hear a dog begin barking. You'll hear like voices or a yell and then a thud. The thud I heard was at 4:17:45 a.m. So then more dog barking ensues, and I just said, poor Murphy. If this is indeed Murphy, some people think it doesn't sound like Murphy's bark, like a puppy bark. Other people are saying, yes, it probably is. Many of the upcoming interviews we're going to read, they will mention hearing a dog barking. Some people will mention, like, I really do think it was Murphy. And he's barking so loudly. Poor dog. Such distress. Some people keep thinking he was like outside somewhere, but maybe it was just how loudly he was barking. I don't know if the window was open in the room Murphy was found in or not, if that's why his barking sounded louder, but we will see at 4:20:47. Brian drives like a bat out of hell out of the area, and his engine is revving. His dirty deeds have been done, and he just guns it up that hill. And then it's kind of interesting to see what happens after. I like to see, more, like real time. There's another vehicle at 4:24 a.m. driving by. Of course, I don't think this vehicle had anything to do with the crime. I know some people will get on there. Some other guy did it, soapbox. But the dog keeps barking, and another vehicle passes around 4:29 a.m. What you're going to hear coming up is the fact that several people anticipated, predicted, felt this evil approaching, either many weeks prior or even during the time it was happening or about to happen. You guys know in the previous video, I already read from that interview of that 21-year-old woman on page 26. And this quote says, blank, her name's redacted, blank spoke about one of the prior tenants of the house. The house had a weird feeling to it. However, it was from several months ago. So now in this next set of interviews, we learn also of a different woman who potentially escaped death. People are like, boy, she dodged a bullet when they read her statements. She did not go home with Maddie and Kaylee that night from the corner club. She was supposed to, quote, she was supposed to go home with them, but she had a weird feeling. Isn't that interesting? So she didn't even go home. I was almost like I'm getting chills now, like it was 1-something a.m. So those are the words from some 21-year-old woman. She hung out with Maddie Mogan and Kaylee Gonzalez at the corner club, that fateful night as Saturday turned into Sunday, only hours before the two women were killed, along with Xana Kernodle and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin. So you can add those weird feelings to many of the other weird happenings surrounding the house that night. So previously in the video right before this one, when I read pages 1 through 35, we discussed someone calling that King Road house a weird house. Now we'll hear from me reading interviews. You'll hear interviews from at least 2 women who used to live in the house. You'll hear me reading it until I can get this audio, if they'll release it. So one of them felt so unsafe in that house that she didn't even return to the home when she was supposed to move back in. I think she told Kaylee, yeah, I'm coming back. And then it was like, no, I'm not coming back. So one woman spoke of the, quote, open door policy of the house and its design structure making her uneasy. Now, this is a woman who lived in that house, not someone who heard about it, not someone who just would visit the house often. She literally lived in that house. Quote, she felt the house was easy to get into and easy to watch because they didn't have any blinds over the windows and the layout of the house. The sliding glass door was broken at one point. If the door was jiggled just right, the door would unlock. So I was comparing, even if I look at those old pictures of the house, there used to be an attached garage right there in the front, and you could see the way the trees are covering it. At that point, it looks like it offered a little bit of, protection or covering or shading, but they expanded it and built that back part on the house. And without the trees there, with such a dense neighborhood, with parking lot back there, the apartments over here, so many people, it's like, living in a fishbowl. That's what it looked like. But it's strange how that woman's testimony, she said that house had a open door policy. Now, granted, she lived in that house perhaps with different roommates, but it's strange how her interview directly conflicts with a woman, Ashlyn Couch. So she went on the Idaho 4 documentary. She said, quote, I had previously lived in the King Road house, and a lot of people were saying that it was the party house, that it was just an open door policy. She said people could just walk in and out. I think that's absolutely not true. That house was a safe space for us. So that was Ashlyn's experience. And maybe it really does depend on who lives in the house. Like Kaylee lived with someone in the house over the summer in 2022. I don't know if it was as much of a party house. Maybe it was. Or I don't know when Ashlyn lived in the house. Perhaps it depends on the time and what was going on. Ashlyn is definitely saying it wasn't some party house. It was a safe space. And some people might feel a little bit the need to defend the victims, by saying, oh, there was an open door policy and, it was a party house. Some people might take that as victim shaming or blaming, and maybe people feel like, oh, the knee-jerk reaction to defend the victims. So I understand that. But the previous tenant, this other woman, she's unnamed in the interview, she's like, it was an open door policy. And then I'm combining this, everything we're learning, with what we already learned from the Idaho 4 documentary, which mentions plenty of quote unquote weird happenings. So you know how Ethan's sister Maisie, she recalled how Ethan texted her that he loved her. He said, I love you. He was trying to convince her to come out Saturday night. That's the last time she would have seen him alive. It just makes you want to cry. She said, which was also weird because we don't say that to each other. That can be some kind of hint from heaven. Almost, it's a gift from heaven that Ethan was able to tell Maisie, I love you. I love you, I love you. He was trying to get her to come out. She went to bed. She missed a bunch of his texts or whatever. But I thought to myself, oh my goodness, she lost him the very next day unexpectedly. But thank God she had that gift of I love you. That reminds me, before my mom died, I had visited Chicago, I think it was in August, and we had spent a lot of time with my mom that weekend. And right before I was going to drive back home, she was like, oh, come on, just come see me one more time. Come see me again. I got you something or whatever. And I was like, oh no, I can't. We spent so much time, but I will, And then less than 2 months later, she was gone to heaven, woke up with Jesus, like my coworker said. So you never know those last times. And it's important to follow your intuition, your Holy Spirit-led gut. Like this guy, David Barriaccio. I do not know how to pronounce his name. David Barriaccio. Oh, forgive me. I look at it, I just need it to know. I didn't YouTube it. Anyway, he's a frat brother at the University of Idaho. Remember this guy? Plenty of online sleuths had accused him of being the killer. He was not. But what David said, he also described the weirdness surrounding the 1122 King Road house early that morning, like during the same time Brian was driving around. I was wondering, can we see David anywhere in this video walking around? So this is what David said in the documentary. He said, quote, that night I had left an apartment complex near the King Road house at 4 a.m. And I remembered thinking to myself that it was eerily quiet. Usually you can see the last remnants of people leaving a party, but it was silent. So imagine that. I mean, people are already like, oh, you were around there at 4 a.m., huh? Still trying to accuse him. He's not guilty. He didn't do anything. I believe they have the right man, Brian Kohberger, in prison. But that night, it was so quiet, David started walking faster. He said, I hustled up and got home as quick as I could. It was like my intuition was telling me something was wrong before I even knew. Isn't that amazing? He's like, wait, something's weird. Usually there are people walking around or leaving a party or, maybe that's why so many, again, I call them kids, so many of those college kids probably felt safe just, tromping around from the frat house through the band field or, all around the Whites and apartments. And, they felt safe maybe walking around in the middle of the night, inebriated, if it's in walking distance, because they just felt like, okay, there's people around, there's other college kids, but I bet they don't do that anymore. Emily and her boyfriend Hunter Johnson, they were in the Idaho 4 documentary as well. So she was saying something weird happened last night. That's what she had heard, of course, referring to the time that Kohberger would rain his evil down on her friends, and she would get called later that day. She would hear from Dylan, something weird happened last night. She would hear from Dylan and Bethany. But before that horrific event, she didn't even think of locking the doors in Moscow. She said, I don't think I've ever locked a single door in Moscow. That's what Emily said. So perhaps that's why it was so weird in the hours right before the murders, or it could have been right as they were happening, right as Brian was approaching. I don't know. Her boyfriend Hunter got an urge to get up and lock his door. Now, that could be normal behavior for people maybe like me, who I'm always up, check, lock doors. But for someone who is not used to, prior to these murders, ever locking their doors, that is unique. Emily said, as soon as I woke up, I saw Hunter locking the door. For his part, Hunter Johnson explained, this is going to sound really weird, but that night, me and Emily woke up in the middle of the night. He doesn't say what time. It felt like there was something pulling me towards doing that. That was probably the Lord pulling Hunter to, you better lock that door. We don't even know all the different houses Bryan Kohberger may have scoped out. You know, I feel like we're just learning the tip of the iceberg. We might assume that Bryan Kohberger just focused on the 1122 King Road house. He only stalked that house. I believe he was probably in the house before. Once you hear what I read coming up next, all the times the girls came home, whether it's from a week-long trip to Coeur d'Alene or just a trip to the grocery store, they would come home and several people talked about the sliding glass door was open. Again, I don't know if they mean open or they just meant unlocked. It sounds like they mean open. Times when even this one former roommate, she knew she had locked it. Part of me thinks Bryan had been in that house before. Someone on Reddit posted something so interesting, like, I think they came home drunk and they were like, you know, I don't even need a light on because the person, you know how you know your house and you come in and you don't even really need many lights on, you know, the hallway's here, walk there. He got in bed and he went like this and he goes, Bryan had been in that house, because he realized to himself, like, wait a minute, I just walked through my own place, maybe drunk as a skunk, and I found my bed because I know it. I don't even need the lights on. Now, granted, I think a lot of lights were on in the 1122 King Road house, but did Bryan chance that being the case? You know, on his day of retribution, his morning of the attack, did he know the lights would be on? Maybe he knew, but I feel like he's been in that house before, but it might not have been the only house he stalked. Whenever I get to them, I know it takes me a while, I'm verbose, but when we get to the interviews about Bryan, so many people will talk about injuries like his knuckles and injuries and this and that. A lot of people are going to talk about him having injuries in October. And I'm like, where did these injuries come from? One woman is like joking with Bryan, were you punching drywall? You know, he was falling down. People are like, was he drinking this whole bottle of wine? Unusual for him because he was depressed, because he knew his job was in the toilet, because he was such a misogynistic pig. What was he doing in October to get all those injuries? Was he attempting to get into Ava's place, you know, down on King Road? Remember, she heard someone October 14th jiggling her doorknob. Did he sustain injuries trying to break into other places that were just more secure? I can't help but ask myself that. But I'm glad Hunter followed his intuition. He locked his own door, locked him and Emily inside that night. Middle of the night, which to me is like 3-ish a.m., maybe around the same time in this video we're watching, you know, Bryan like a shark, ugh, evil. So only hours later, Hunter would be the first person to discover the victims' bodies. So you'll hear all those details coming up when I read from the Idaho Police State Documents, pages 36 through 55. And you know, it's hard to search this document. Thankfully, Idaho State Police put it on their official website. You know, previously they didn't have it up. And I tried to convert this whole 556-page document into text using some advanced version of Adobe. I was like trying to get a subscription and it wasn't working. They told me the document was too big, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's why people were breaking it up. I don't know. I wanted to see just how many mentions of the word weird showed up, whether people were talking about the house or Kohberger himself. But it wasn't working on Adobe. So when I search using just preview that your MacBook opens up, it shows me just like 23 instances of the word. I know it's many more because preview is not catching all the words in this PDF. That's just how it works. PDFs are so like weird. They are more like images instead of like text, so people can't change them up. It makes sense. Anyway, I guess we'll find out as we keep reading. That's another reason I want to just read thoroughly in sections instead of just trying to search for stuff I might miss. So you'll read all the instances of, you know, the woman who didn't come back, different people, weird, open door policy, sliding glass door unlocked, all that stuff coming up. Just the weird spirit that was around there and how the people who heeded that weirdness, maybe it helped save their lives. It's just sad to think of. In learning the importance of heeding the correct spirit and distinguishing spirits, I always pray for discernment, you know, because some people can be tricky. Some people can be really fooled. Was Bryan always this way? And what does he talk about with his mom? And believe me, I've tried to get his jail calls. We'll see what else happens with that. But let's read, before you listen to me read all this narration, let's read 1 John 4, 1 through 3. Beloved, do not believe every spirit speaking through a self-proclaimed prophet. Instead, test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets and teachers have gone out into the world. By this you know and recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges and confesses the fact that Jesus Christ has actually come in the flesh as a man is from God. God is its source. And every spirit that does not confess Jesus, acknowledging that he has come in the flesh, but would deny any of the Son's true nature, is not of God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming and is now already in the world. I thought that was kind of apropos to know what kind of spirit we're dealing with. People can, I don't know, talk a good game, and they can even claim to be Christians. Think like Brian. Didn't Brian put that on his intake? I saw somewhere. So many convicted or accused people. I'm looking at their paperwork. I think Brian might have put that on his paperwork. You just can't slap the name Christian on there. You got to really believe what God says. Like, believe he is who he says. He came in the flesh. He died for us. He was raised to life. Confess that with our mouths. Believe it in our hearts, and we're saved. So I'm saying all this to say, if you get weird feelings about stuff, I was like, wow, it could really save your life. You know, that woman who didn't move back in saved her life. The woman the same night who didn't come home with Maddie and Kaylee, probably for no other reason than just having a weird feeling. That's what she said. I don't know how much of this is, quarterbacking, Monday morning quarterbacking, or hindsight is 2020, or if they really felt like something's up here. And Hunter locking the door, that was a weird feeling. David, like, oh, this is weird, hustling up. So you'll hear some of the weirdness. Some of it is in the Idaho 4 documentary. I'll link to that below too if I remember. Some of it is in this paperwork coming up. Thanks for listening to it all. We will keep plugging along till we're done. Take care. Let's pick up here on page 36. This witness apparently is a 19-year-old white female. I don't think she knows much. It's November 18th, 2022. She's being interviewed at the ISP District 3 office in Meridian, Idaho. So they have it supposedly on audio visual. So in this part you can see it's very brief. She's a part of a sorority at the University of Idaho. She knew Ethan through his fraternity. She got to know Xana through Ethan. She didn't know Kaylee. She did not know Maddie very well. So she just knew Ethan and Xana for about 1.5 years. Back then she lived at the sorority house. She'd never even been to the 1122 King Road house. She was at the frat house Saturday night, November 12th, for a party. Ethan and Xana were at the party. She had never heard of any stalking incidents. She was with Xana until 2 a.m. So I see why they are interviewing her. She would be an important witness just to verify where Xana was until 2 a.m. She took a picture with Xana and walked home. Ethan and Xana remained at the frat party. She didn't have any further contact with them. So Xana had been dating Ethan about a year. This was so cute. Everyone had a crush on Xana. That's just so sweet. She heard someone was at the 1122 King Road house after some party. I guess it's he. He is a blank and a PC brother of Ethan. What the heck is a PC brother? Is that some sort of frat brother? Her interview concluded at 2:26 p.m. So it began at 2:13 p.m. It was only 13 minutes long. Interviews like this, I probably will not request the audio, but it is interesting just to see cute little quips like this. Everyone had a crush on Xana. Let's move forward. Now we're on page 38. This is a November 18th, 2022 interview with a 22-year-old white female. There's a CD interview with whomever this is. I'm assuming that's only audio. She was a University of Idaho student, and she had someone present for the interview. I don't know if that would have been her mom, her dad, her lawyer. This will be an interesting interview in terms of another person who noticed the sliding glass door at 1122 King Road unlocked after the girls came home. When they say open, I'm not sure if they mean like slid open ajar or just unlocked. Either way, it's unsettling. The detective says, I asked her to explain her day. She stated the following. She said it was game day, college football. Her and her friends attended a pre-game at the blank apartment complex at approximately 3 p.m. She remembers talking to Maddie and Kaylee at the pre-game and was sure she saw the rest of the roommates there. She remembers seeing Xana as well. well. At approximately 3:50 p.m., she said she left the pregame and went to the game that started at 4 p.m. She said she was going to help Kaylee get a ticket for the game. Kaylee decided not to go to the game because Maddie was not going. So that finally gave me an answer that the girls didn't go to the game. Kaylee and Maddie, we learn, did not go. A lot of people wondered if they ever actually went to the game. After the game, she said they went to a place called blank. So I was wondering why they didn't publish that name. Was it like just a local pub, or where could it be? Why wouldn't they publish it? Anyway, Kaylee texted her and asked if she was going to the corner club. She said she would go after the fights on TV were over. At approximately 10:59, Kaylee texted her asking if she needed a ride. Kaylee's text read, "Me, Maddie, and blank are getting one so we can pick you up." She said she was at the corner club when she saw the message. So the girl was already there. At approximately 10:30 to 11 p.m., she saw Maddie and Kaylee at the corner club. At approximately 11:30 p.m. to midnight, she left the corner club with her other friend and boyfriend and went home. She said after they got home, her friend was drunk and she was trying to put her to bed. Her boyfriend went to bed in her room. I asked her how well she knew the victims. She said she met Maddie her freshman year and knew her through mutual friends. She said she met Kaylee her freshman year and were both in the same sorority. She said Kaylee was her best friend. She said she did not know Xana as well. She described her as being a big party girl and would attend the same parties as her. Xana was best friends with a lot of the blanks, maybe other sorority members. I asked if Kaylee ever mentioned if she was ever followed or talked about some weird activity recently. She said Kaylee had never mentioned that to her. I asked her if Kaylee had anybody who had issues with her. She said Kaylee never mentioned it to her. She said Kaylee was the type to go out and meet random people at places like John's Alley and would get rides from random people. Now, I know that point sounds pretty scary, but Kaylee sounded like a personable, fun-loving girl. She liked to go out, she liked to talk to people, she liked to explore, and yeah, get rides from random people. That sounds like strangers almost. But again, I cannot place any victim blaming here like some of the worst things I've read people writing and assuming about Kaylee. It's sad, but when you are in kind of a small-ish or medium-ish college town, sometimes you do have this false sense of safety. Like, oh, everybody just wants to have a great time. She said Kaylee and Jack had broken up recently after a long relationship. I asked her where her house was in relation to the victim's house. She said both houses shared a backyard with a chain link fence separating the 2 yards. So I have seen that chain link fence. So this woman was pretty close to that house. Sergeant Hoxie asked if she heard any strange noises. She said she did not. I asked her if Kaylee had always stayed at the same apartment. She said Kaylee had stayed there all summer. So by apartment, I'm assuming this sergeant means the 1122 King Road house. She said Kaylee's room in the summer was on the main floor. At the end of the summer, Kaylee moved into someone else's room upstairs. I believe that's a different roommate. I won't mention her name. And we're going to hear from her too and why she didn't come back. I think it's the same girl. It's just eerie. But this one, she said she heard from one of the girl's friends. They went to Coeur d'Alene for a week. And when they returned, they noticed the rear sliding glass door was open. She did not know the date of the incident. It would be interesting to know the date of that incident. Then we could put it in the timeline and we could see, was it just a fluke? And when they say the rear sliding glass door was open, do they mean those girls came home after an entire week? The sliding glass door had been slid wide open and just left that way? Or was it just a little bit, open, ajar? Or was it just unlocked? That's what I would love to know. Because if it did happen after Brian Koberger moved to the Pullman, Washington area, very well could have been him. Or it could have been one of their close friends. As one girl's going to say, their close friends were the ones who used the sliding glass door. And it sounded like just a janky door that you could get open if you really wanted to get in that house. Sergeant Hoxie asked about drug use. She said she never saw Kaylee or Maddie do drugs, so that's pretty consistent. She said she wasn't sure about Xana. She said they probably had, but it wasn't anything that was prominent. She said we should talk to some of Xana's friends, all these other people. I asked if there was any other information she feels we should know or any other people we should talk to. She said we should speak with blank and blank. So that interview ended apparently right there. I don't know what time. Let's move on to the next one. Alrighty, we're up to page 41, and now this witness is a 23-year-old white male. He was interviewed on November 18th. A lot of interviews apparently took place that day. This one took place again in District 3 office in Meridian. So he reported the following during his interview. He lived at blank, Moscow, Idaho, while attending University of Idaho. His house was across the street from where the homicides occurred. So he knew Kaylee since her freshman year at the university. Kaylee also dated his friend blank, so I'm assuming they mean Jack, and him were in blank fraternity together. Kaylee was in blank sorority, which was down the road from his fraternity. He wasn't extremely close to Kaylee, but was friends with her. Jack and Kaylee had been dating since their sophomore year in high school. He thought they attended Lake City High School in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Jack and Kaylee had been dating on and off for the last few months because Kaylee was moving to Texas or North Carolina after the semester. He didn't think Jack wanted to break up with Kaylee, but Jack was understanding. He thought Kaylee initiated the breakup. There wasn't any turmoil in their relationship, and they were still talking and hanging out together. Kaylee and Jack also had a dog together, which lived at his house last year. Jack didn't talk to him about his relationship with Kaylee. He worked at the blank and the blank. He thought blank might have quit the blank. So many redactions again, which is fine. People need their privacy, I understand. He also knew the other victims, Maddie and Xana. Xana had gone over to his house a few times to see his roommate from last year, but blank transferred schools to blank, so I don't know who that roommate was. He didn't really talk to Maddie, but knew her by her first name. The other two girls, perhaps he means Dylan and Bethany, were younger, and he really didn't know them. He didn't know Ethan. His house was 3 stories where he lived with blank, 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 blank. He and blank lived in the top floor of the house. He never noticed anything out of place near his house or the victim's house. On November 12th, 2020, I believe they must have meant 2022, the University of Idaho's football team was playing UC Davis at home at 4 p.m. He woke up that day, so this is Saturday before the murders. He woke up that day, got some food, and started tailgating for the game. After tailgating, he went home, and then he went out to the bars. At approximately 11 p.m., he got to the corner club. While he was at the corner club, he saw Kaylee, but couldn't remember if she was with anyone. At approximately 12:30 a.m., a sober member from his fraternity arrived to drive blank and him home. As they were leaving the corner club, they were pulled over for an expired registration. The cops let them go, and he was driven home. Blank and blank got home about 30 minutes after him. At his house, he hung out and drank beers with blank and blank girlfriend. After hanging out, he went to bed, which was early for him. He never heard anything of Kaylee having a stalker until after her death. Kaylee worked at blank, where he heard she had a weird person coming in for her. He heard this information from blank. So I thought Kaylee had a work from home job. Was he assuming Kaylee worked at Winco? Did she work at Winco? He also heard from his girlfriend Kaylee had a weird guy following her around Winco earlier that week. This information was from a third party. He wasn't aware of any of the victims using drugs. he and his roommates blank. He never texted or called Kaylee. He wasn't aware of any recent parties at the victim's house. He wanted us to know that blank heard a dog barking around 4 a.m. Blank reported it to the police the following day after the incident. He did not have any injuries to his hands, arms, or face. At approximately 11:56 a.m., we concluded the interview. Lots of interviews, police doing their due diligence, making sure, these people who were in the victim's periphery, making sure they had no injuries, no obvious injuries to their hands, arms, or face. So this guy's interview was less than half an hour. He didn't know much. He lived across the street. By him living in, I guess, a 3-story house, he could have been privy to something. At least he let them know that someone he knows heard a dog barking around 4 a.m., with multiple people attesting to the fact that some dog was barking, whether it was Murphy or another dog. It was loud enough for people to hear at 4 a.m. I'm sure that helped investigators hone their timelines, along with all the video evidence they were collecting at the time, to figure out when the murders likely happened. Let's move on to the next. Interview, again, November 18th. They must have just been knocking them out one after the next. Interviews that day. They were really trying to find this suspect, of course. Well, this witness is a 21-year-old white male. He was 21 at the time. He was a University of Idaho student. It says, I asked him to run me through his day. He stated the following. He said he started his day at approximately 10:30 to 11 a.m. I wonder which day this is. Are they talking about Sunday? No, this must have been Saturday. The Saturday prior to the crime. Okay, so he got some food and ate. He took his girlfriend, I guess, to get some beer at Treehouse. They started drinking prior to the Vandal game. At approximately 4 p.m., he said he went to the game. He returned home between 8 to 9 p.m. and had a sandwich. He said he took a 2-hour nap. At approximately 11 p.m., he woke up. His roommate was wanting to go to the bar. They went to the corner club, had a few beers, and hung out. So I guess a lot of these interviews are from people who, may have been at the corner club, or they lived nearby the 1122 King Road house. Okay, so at approximately 1:45 a.m., their fraternity president picked up blank and blank and drove them home. After getting home, they hung out for about 15 to 20 minutes to check on his friend who had consumed too much alcohol. We know that's kind of like a common theme for this Saturday, it appears. And another reason I'm thinking Brian Koberger probably chose Sunday morning at 4 a.m. This guy said he went to his room, where his girlfriend was already in bed. He said they talked for a bit and believed he fell asleep around 2:45 a.m. I asked him if he heard any noises that could have woken him. He said no. He did say his friend told him he heard a dog barking between the hours of 4:15 a.m. and 5 a.m. He said it sounded like Murphy. Murphy was a dog who was shared between their two houses. He said Murphy was at the girl's house that day. That's cute. They must have let Murphy run around. I asked him how close he knew the girls. He said, I'm like a handshake to them. So I guess he means like a hi and bye sort of acquaintance. Perhaps no one close to them. He knew Kaylee through blank. They had dated for a while. I'm assuming they mean Jack. He never really talked to Maddie. He was friends with Xana and had met Ethan at an event called Rush. That's fraternity stuff. I asked him if he had seen any of the victims that night. He said he saw Kaylee and Maddie at the corner club. He said they were with blank. He said they were heading to John's Alley. He said he heard blank was kicked out of John's Alley. After John's Alley, the three of them went to the grub truck, and he believed they went home afterwards. So this shows you how confusing the game of telephone, people telling the story can be. Up until this point, a lot of people say they just went to the corner club. They were going to go to John's Alley. That's Maddie and Kaylee. But then they changed their mind. Instead of going to John's Alley, they went to the corner club. But I don't think anyone was kicked out of John's Alley. From what we've heard, up until this point, some guy got kicked out of the corner club, and the girls never went to John's Alley. But this witness is recounting something a little bit different, as if they went to corner club, and then they went to John's Alley, and then they went to the grub truck. I asked him if any of the victims were involved in the use of drugs. He said he knew blank, and Kaylee and Maddie had blank. I don't know what that means. He wasn't sure if Xana blank. So many redactions, you just don't know what the heck they're talking about. Sergeant Hoxie asked if the girls had a party the night before or the day of the incident. He said he saw a bunch of people dressed up and walking up to the house with speakers. He believed they had a formal the night before the incident, so he's referencing that ball. Sergeant Hoxie asked if he had heard about a stalker. He said he had heard from blank Sunday night Kaylee was followed to her car in the parking lot at Winco. He heard Kaylee might have been followed in the store as well. So a lot of people heard that Winco incident, but I think it just happened from a guy who they really looked into. If this is the same guy, they looked into him. He admitted to being just a guy who was trying to work up the nerve to maybe talk to Kaylee, maybe ask her out, maybe he thought she was pretty. That might have been all it was. Sergeant Hoxie asked him how he heard about the incident. Blank said blank best friend FaceTimed her and said, "Hey, there's a bunch of police officers outside. Do you know what's going on?" He went upstairs and saw the officers taping off the scene. So since he lives in that 3-story house and he lives across the street, he probably had a great vantage point of what was going on that day, I'm assuming. He said after the Winco thing happened, blank told him a couple of weeks ago all the roommates were out of the house getting groceries. When they returned, their sliding glass door was open. So we've got that same story. This was just 2 weeks prior to the murders. Allegedly, when the girls came home from getting groceries, their sliding glass door was open. That's a different incident, apparently, than the week-long trip to Coeur d'Alene, where I don't know if everyone was out of the house and they came home again after being gone a week and the sliding glass door was open. Now, in my mind's eye, I can't help but imagine if Brian Kohberger had been watching that house, an easy house to watch because the area is really dense and the way the house was just like a fishbowl. Just wait till we get to the part where another roommate who was still on the lease talked about it not having many blinds and just, you'll see. But if we're talking about 2 separate incidents, at least when the sliding glass door was open, not even the front door. I think there were different incidents when the front door was open. I mean, how many times can your door be left open like that? Or it was closed when they left the house and someone opened it. So I'm thinking in my mind's eye, if Brian had been watching this house like many of us assume he did with those 23 different cell tower hits on a tower that served this house, we haven't seen evidence yet of Brian actually, parking back there and watching the house. But if he did, would he sit there for so long and wait, or stand there, wait until he knew everyone was out of the house or it was pretty empty, and try his hand at, going in that sliding glass door, walking around to truly learn the layout of the house? Did he do that? Was that why he was able to move so quickly, that morning of his horrible crime? This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm wondering. And did he leave doors open on purpose just to freak people out? It seems like he'd like to freak people out. If indeed it was him, for example, entering Nayang Ko's apartment over there at Steptoe Apartments and moving things around, was that his thrill? Was that the thrill he got out of freaking people out? Entering their homes, not necessarily stealing stuff like he did in his younger days as the Idaho 4 book chronicles, but did he just start breaking into homes, entering homes and moving things around and maybe waiting and even watching their reaction, or going home knowing he had freaked someone out? Anyway, this ends with number 17. I asked him if there was any other information he feels we should know. He said he had heard from someone that one of the girls was downstairs, so he must be talking about Dylan here. When she opened the door, she saw a person in a ski mask, made eye contact, slammed her door, and locked it. So obviously he's talking about what Dylan recounted to someone. And actually number 18 is the last one. Interview was terminated. So that's it for this guy. This is a good one because she used to live at that 1122 King Road house. November 18th, they interviewed this 22-year-old white female. So her mother was also present and someone else. I don't know who. But it was approximately 1:16 p.m. ISP Detective Sergeant Ken Beckner and Trooper Andrew Weinstein interviewed her at the district office in Meridian. So she takes online classes and she lives in Boise. She lived at the 1122 King Road house last year while in a certain sorority. She lived in that room that blank is currently in. Maddie is the only one currently in the house that was in the house last year too. So Maddie was her best friend. She knew Xana very well and became close to Kaylee. Maddie FaceTimed her that night at 12:40 a.m. Moscow time. Imagine that, she got a FaceTime. Maddie was at the corner club. The conversation was only about 40 seconds. Maddie was with her friend blank. So this girl communicated with Maddie every day. Maddie's boyfriend was Jake. He was with blank group of friends Saturday night at the bar in Boise. She was told by blank of a time at Winco when someone followed Kaylee out of the building to her car. There was also another time when all the roommates of 1122 King Road went out for a bit, and when they came back, the back door was open after previously locked. Now, she's the only one I've seen so far who says, look, that back door was open, but it had been locked. So I don't know if this was the grocery store trip, but that still would be scary. You know, you lock your sliding glass door, you go out for a grocery run, and you come back and it's open. And people keep saying open, that's what the detectives keep writing. By open, in my mind, that means like slid open, not just unlocked. So if it was Brian going in there, sneaking in, did he intentionally leave that slider open? She heard Kaylee was walking her dog once and had seen someone hiding behind a garbage dumpster. Kaylee felt someone had been watching her. This was about a month prior, so Kaylee's intuition was correct. Obviously, Brian was watching that house. Obviously, he was watching the occupants. Even though we expressly do not have anything that connects him to the victims. You know, even though later in one of these reports, he's going to claim Brian actually said Kaylee's name. We now know that is incorrect according to the latest reporting from the Idaho Statesman. So even though I trust a lot of these police reports, in fact, investigators were the ones that were there, boots on the ground, I understand how things can get misconstrued, how, you know, conversations can be misunderstood. So this woman had moved into the 1122 King Road house this semester. Her boyfriend was blank and lived in Boise. So what do they mean she had moved into the house this semester? They're saying the fall semester of 2022. She just wasn't there, I guess. She thought we should talk to blank. Last year, her friend blank was contacted by a man she didn't know who knew her name and major. She kept seeing this man. He once came up to her at the corner club. He knew Maddie's major. Blank is still on the lease of the house. The guy was about their age. So this interview concluded at 1:30. And I think the very next interview is going to also be from someone on the lease. Yes, the next one will be very interesting about how she just had a weird feeling about that 1122 King Road house. Stay tuned. Okay, here's her November 18th interview. She's a 22-year-old female, race unknown. So it kind of starts off the same way. November 18th, Detective Hoxie and Detective Piscina interviewed this University of Idaho graduate, so she graduated by this time. It starts the same way. I asked her to run me through her day. Now I wish this person would say, I asked her to run me through her day on Saturday, November 12th or whatever. Anyway, we need more details. She stated the following. She graduated in May and her name was still on the lease. She planned on returning to Moscow for work. Her boyfriend was living there as well. She would visit often. The last time she visited was Halloween weekend. See, I'm such a stickler for details. This is why I like to hear the actual audio, because already I'm thinking, okay, she planned to return to Moscow. Her name was still on the lease. Her boyfriend was living there as well. Where? Her boyfriend, was he living in the 1122 King Road house, or I don't know. but she would visit often. She was there Halloween weekend. Maddie was her best friend. That's funny how more than one person has said that. That shows you just a quality person when everyone, believes they are that person's best friend. So Maddie, Xana, and her were in the same sorority. Kaylee was Maddie's childhood best friend. She said she never hung out with Ethan. The last time she spoke to Maddie was a week prior to the incident via text. I asked her if Maddie ever mentioned anything about a stalker. She said no. She asked Maddie how the house was doing. Maddie said the house and the roommates were great. They had a good system in place. Now it's ironic to me that this woman would ask Maddie, how's the house doing? I know a lot of people do that, but this woman will go on to describe, how that house, certain things about it freaked her out. Jake was Maddie's boyfriend. They had been dating for approximately 2 years. Their relationship was good, and they never had any arguments. She never observed any arguments between them. Sergeant Hoxie asked what room she lived in when she stayed there for school. She said her room was on the upstairs on the left, and Maddie's was on the right. So she was in that actual bedroom, I believe, if I'm understanding correctly, up on the 3rd floor. The room across from Maddie's would have been Kaylee's room. I think that's where it all happened. Over the summer, she still had some belongings there because she planned on going back. Towards the end of July, Kaylee texted her and asked if she could move into her room. She told her yes because she had decided not to go back to the house and stayed in Boise. So many people are grabbing snippets from this interview and saying, wow, she really dodged a bullet. I wonder if she just did have that gut feeling, a Holy Spirit-led revelation not to go back to that house. Kaylee worked from home remotely and was home most of the time. Kaylee had a roommate who was living with her for the summer. Blank blank. We don't know who this roommate was, at least I don't. I know a lot of sleuths have figured out. I've seen different names about who was on the lease. And a lot of people, I hate to see how some people are speaking such bad things about Kaylee, her work from home. Some people are like, oh, it must have been an OF, she must have been making money on OF. And certain detractors, I don't understand why they're being so cruel to Kaylee. I mean, she suffered a horrible fate. And some people are kind of like, I see it all online. Some folks are throwing these jabs at Kaylee with no proof. Like, I've seen no literal, physical, valid proof that Kaylee had any kind of OF page. And even if she did, are these people bringing it up, the scuttlebutt, online? Are they making it up, or are they bringing it up in a way almost as if to victim shame her, to say, almost as if they're saying, oh, see, she deserved what she got. I don't understand the rhetoric or the logic. It's cruel to me. Back to the document. I asked if she knew all the tenants who currently reside in the house. She said, along with the 3 involved, blank, and then blank lived in Reno. So yes, we know, I believe it's Bethany who went off and lived in Reno. She kept in contact with her regularly. She met Maddie in 2019 and had been friends with her since. She said Maddie was the most anti-conflict person ever. Blank told her the Friday before the incident, the girls had a sorority formal. The formal was kept intimate. They only had people they knew at the formal, and it did not get out of hand. So again, here we have discrepancies between what Dateline reported. So this girl, who should be more in the know, knew the actual victims, are saying the formal was intimate. On Dateline, they were saying, oh, it's like up to 150 people were at that party. Okay, but this woman did describe the house she lived in as, quote, an open door policy. That's scary, meaning people were constantly going in and out of the house. She should know because she lived there. She was always scared of, quote, something like that happening. She would triple check the lock on her bedroom door because she didn't feel safe. Now that's something. A lot of people talk about, oh, Moscow, this feeling of safety. People didn't think about anyone breaking in or anything. Whereas this woman, she felt so different, particularly because of the house. It's open door policy, people constantly going in and out. She was scared of something like that happening. She would triple check the lock on her bedroom door because she didn't feel safe. Maddie would leave her bedroom door unlocked most of the time, as well as her window. So that's scary too. There were times she would hear footsteps in the house and would blow it off thinking someone just had a friend over. So I'm assuming they mean this woman who, doesn't live in the house anymore. She would hear footsteps in the house, and she did think, okay, one of my roommates has a friend over, which is very logical. If there's 6 people total, let's say 6 women total living in that house, and if you read the Idaho 4 book, it was kind of like, the house. It was like a house almost where everyone wanted to live, like the place to be. Even though it was this big fishbowl, maybe that was part of the attraction for some people. The popular people, and they get to live in the popular house. But it makes sense if you have a total of 6 people, 6 women living in a house. On any given day, they might have their boyfriend over, coming over at night. They might have a couple of girlfriends over, sorority girls, lots of friends. So you would expect, you could hear footsteps, but you can't necessarily automatically think, oh, that's someone breaking in. So again, that lends credence to me to Dylan's way of thinking. When she opened her door, she saw the weird guy. She didn't know who he was, but I'm sure Dylan was also used to a lot of people walking around that house who she didn't always know who they were. For example, if it's like a more established home like my own, let's say, it's not in a college town, it's close to my neighbors. We're generally aware of kind of who's around. So someone walking through my house, it would be like, wait, no, you know immediately. But this house, 1122 King Road, with its open door policy and, 6 women, and I'm sure lots of boyfriends and lots of friends, you might not know who's always there. Sergeant Hoxie asked, while she was living there, if there were any break-ins or if she heard of a stalker. There would be times she would wake up and would see the sliding glass door was unlocked. She thought it might have been from someone forgetting to lock the door after having people over the night before. That makes sense. So this particularly says unlocked. So I could see that happening if she's the type, which I am. There's benefits to OCD. You're checking things a billion times. You're probably not going to leave the stove on. You're probably going to check multiple times to make sure all your doors are locked. So this girl would know, okay, wait, my door was locked. The sliding glass door was locked. She would wake up, maybe come down to the kitchen and see, wait a minute, the sliding glass door is unlocked. But that makes sense. Let's say if, a bunch of sorority girls were over there watching movies, whatever, they fell asleep. The next morning they left. Well, if they just are used to going out through the sliding glass door, I can see from the inside someone flip open the lock, slide it open, leave, and slide it closed. Someone would have to be there, right there on the inside, to lock the inner lock, to close it. So I'm sure that didn't happen all the time. You can't lock most sliding glass doors from the outside. At least I think most of them don't have outside locks, like some key or something. I asked about other times the glass door was found unlocked or opened. Blank told her a while back they had all gone out. When they got back, they noticed the sliding glass door was open. The girls were usually pretty good at making sure the doors were locked. Most people would use the front door. Only their close friends would use the sliding glass door in the kitchen. She's saying, look, these women were pretty conscientious and aware of making sure the doors were locked. So they're all mentioning this event when they went out. It sounds like all of them had gone out and got back and noticed the slider open. So who was it? Was it Brian who did it? Was it another friend of theirs? She had 3 different run-ins with a white male who she described as approximately 5'5". So we know that's not Brian. He's taller. Fit build, slick back hair, clean shaved, possibly mid-20s. The first time was at the corner club. He approached her and called her by name. She did not know him. He told her he had come back and changed his major. A little while after that incident, during Parents' Weekend, she saw the same guy at a restaurant called Nectar. He was sitting at the bar with his back to her. As she was leaving, he turned and stared at her as she left. She told her boyfriend about the weird guy she kept seeing. The third time was walking down the street in town. The male was with a group of guys across the street. He turned and stared at her as she walked by. She told her boyfriend about the guy. Her boyfriend was going to talk to the guy, but she did not let him. She never figured out who the guy was, but did remember what he looked like. This guy very well could have been a different stalker, or someone who may have really liked her, and it's sad that some guys don't know how to approach a woman, or it's a different era. You know, with social media so prominent, he could have quickly found out her name, quickly found out the places she likes to frequent, or quickly followed her or whatever. You know, he's approaching her, he's telling her, oh, he came back in town, he changed his major. I don't know if she'd ever talked to him before and just never really, you know, paid him any never mind, or if this guy was a true stalker. Some guys don't understand how their actions can be so, like, scary to women. But I understand why she would tell her boyfriend, look, don't approach him, because at that point her boyfriend might have, you know, leveled this guy or caught some kind of charges, so I'm sure she didn't want her boyfriend to get in trouble. Stuff happens. Sergeant Hoxie asked her if Kaylee ever talked about a stalker. Blank told her about a time at Wenco when Kaylee thought somebody was following her. Recently, Kaylee told her she took out the trash to the dumpster located across the parking lot and felt there was a figure standing around close by. Kaylee texted her friend and asked her when she would be home. Kaylee was home alone at the time. Now, I wonder if this was at night or not. You know, there's different little tricks and tips that, of course, by no fault of our own, but people adapt just to try and prevent crimes from happening. Like, I tend to never take the garbage out at night. It's right next to my house. I guess I'm more worried about like raccoons and stuff or skunks than people, but I know how it is when you really want the trash out of your house. It might be smelling bad and you're like, oh, but you can always just take the trash out of the can, take the bag and just hang it up on a doorknob somewhere near the door or wherever by the door and say, I will take it out during the light of day. So I don't know if this was, you know, at night. Kaylee's like, I believe the other girl said Kaylee was possibly walking Murphy at the time too. So I'm sure she wanted to kill two birds with one stone. You know, let me walk Murphy, let me take the trash to the dumpster. If it was night, imagine if someone was lurking behind the dumpster and watching her. Scary. But Kaylee knew something was going on. Sergeant Hoxie asked if she heard about how the girl's day had gone. She heard about the day's activities from Blank and through Snapchat. Blank said they had a really good day and had fun. It sounded like they started at their house and went to the Blank apartments. Those are probably the white apartments, I think. She believed at some point Xana and her boyfriend Blank and Blank went back to the house because they weren't 21 years old. Maddie and Kaylee then went to the corner club. Blank told her the last text he got from Maddie was she just woke up from a nap and was going to the corner club. I asked her if Blank had mentioned what she thought happened. It was game day, so everyone had been drinking. Blank told her she wasn't sure when Xana and Ethan got home. Perhaps that's Dylan telling her. Xana was with Blank, and they were home before Maddie and Kaylee got back. Blank told her she went upstairs and ate grub truck with Maddie and Kaylee. She went back downstairs to go to bed. So that must be Bethany or Dylan? I asked her if Blank mentioned seeing anybody else in the house or if anybody came home with Maddie and Kaylee. She said no. It sounded like it was just the three of them eating grub truck. Blank told Blank she woke up around 4 a.m. to music playing, so this must be what Dylan told her, because that same sentence, that same phrase about waking up at 4 a.m. hearing music playing, it's being reiterated. She hoped Kaylee would turn it off soon. So Dylan hears this music playing and she's like, I'm trying to go to bed. I hope Kaylee turns it off. Blank had said she could hear Kaylee and their dog Murphy playing upstairs. Shortly after that, Blank told Blank the music turned off and heard Kaylee say, I think someone's here. I'm wondering if Kaylee truly was playing music. Kaylee and Maddie up, still celebrating, like, oh, you're about to leave, you're gonna move away, let's party. Did they have the music on? Were they dancing? Were they making TikTok videos or whatever? And then the music turned off. Did Kaylee really say, I think someone's here? Is that when Brian entered? Did he just surprise them? Were the girls awake? Blank, so this is Dylan, told her she heard someone run upstairs and run back down. Dylan said she peeked out of her room and did not see anything, but could vaguely hear someone in the bathroom. She called Blank and told her to come down to her room. So Bethany told Dylan to come down to her room. After a few minutes, Dylan told her she opened her bedroom door and saw a person standing out there and they made eye contact. So Dylan is pretty consistent about making eye contact with Brian. Brian may have very well seen Dylan. Dylan said he then walked out the sliding glass door. Sergeant Hoxie asked if Dylan had described this person to her. She told her she felt hazy and didn't remember many details. She told her she thought the person was about her height and had his face and forehead covered. Dylan said she ran to Bethany's room and locked the door. Sergeant Hoxie asked why she thought someone would want to harm her friend. She thought it was someone who was watching. Boy, she was right. She was always afraid of that. She always had an uneasy, weird feeling at that house, which is one of the reasons she didn't want to go back. She felt the house was easy to get into and easy to watch, because they didn't have any blinds over the windows and layout of the house. That's the part that's scary. It made me go back and look at all the photos I could find so far of the 1122 King Road house and look for blinds. Because, we saw after the crime, obviously, with lights on, we could see the investigators in there. It was easy to look into. And I'm wondering how often the blinds were just open or if there were no curtains. It makes you wonder. I don't know if this was Dylan or someone had told Blank the sliding glass door was broken at one point. If the door was jiggled just right, the door would unlock. If the front door was locked, you had to enter the code on the keypad, but if the deadbolt wasn't locked, the door could be opened. So you do have easy points of entry. If she knew about the door being jiggled just right, someone else wrote somewhere if you just lifted up on it, the door would unlock. How many people knew that about the sliding glass door? And she's saying if the front door was locked, you had to enter the code. Several people knew that code. But if the deadbolt wasn't locked, the door could be opened. So does that mean with no deadbolt on, people could kind of easily get into the front door too? I asked her if there was anybody else we should talk to. We should talk to blank blank. The interview was concluded. So that was pretty interesting to me. One of the most interesting from a woman who literally lived in the house. So she knew what was going on. She had this weird feeling. She had an uneasy feeling. So much so she didn't even return. And it's just scary with her literally knowing how easy it was to get into that house. It sounds like a combination of just factors, errors, a house so open, a crowded house, an open door policy, lots of people knowing the house, knowing it as a party house, easy to open slider, potentially easy to open front door, potentially a lot of people knowing the front door code, doors being unlocked. So a lot of people wonder how Brian Kohberger chose his victims. Maybe it was more so the house than the occupants. Maybe the house took higher precedence than the occupants. Maybe it was something he liked about the address, 1122. Of course, something he liked about the occupants, the beautiful people, and the ease of getting in to this, quote, party house. Very scary. Lights off and on. Again, not victim shaming. Again, this is just making people aware. But if there are lights that are on often, curtains open, perhaps shades open, windows open. It was just the perfect storm for this horrible crime. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, now we have the interview of a 25-year-old white female. There's flash drive with interview audio. So again, this woman was interviewed on November 18th, 2022 at around 12:53 p.m. by ISP investigators Lieutenant Catlin. This woman left the University of Idaho in May 2021, the year before the homicides, but she belonged to a certain sorority and Maddie was her best friend. There's another woman calling Maddie her best friend. This is just so cute to me. She was also friends with Kaylee, Xana, Ethan, and blank, blank, blank. She did become close with Xana the year before she left U of I. She had gone up to Moscow and seen all of them for homecoming in October 2022. So wow, just the month before. She knew Kaylee through Maddie. She had met Ethan once or twice through Xana. She did not know, I'll bet you that says Dylan or Bethany as well. She had only met them a few times. She received a FaceTime call from Maddie the night of the homicides at approximately 1:50 a.m. Boise time. She was drunk at the time of the call. Maddie appeared to be also. The call only lasted approximately 1 minute. So I wonder if Maddie was just FaceTiming a bunch of different people. Blank was with blank and blank during the call at a bar in Boise. This woman apparently was in Boise at a bar. Maddie's calling her, FaceTiming her. Maddie was with Kaylee at the corner club in Moscow during the call. Blank had run into Maddie's boyfriend Jake at a bar called Amsterdam Lounge in Boise. Blank took a picture with Blank at the bar at approximately 1:15 a.m. Other people were also in the photo. I confirmed the date and timestamp on the photo as being from the night of the homicides. So the reason this is so important is, you know how some people automatically blamed Jake or Jack, saying, oh, they had to have something to do with it. Well, this investigator is confirming, okay, Jake, I'm sure they're probably talking about Jake here taking a photo at the bar at 1:15, or someone taking a photo with Jake in the photo. So this investigator is confirming the date time stamp on that photo. Okay, he was in Boise. Here he was at this particular time. It's really important. That's one reason I do like when I go places, and we don't have to necessarily save our physical receipts anymore, but if we're off getting a car wash, or we're off at the store, or we're off at a bar or wherever, we know there's a lot of video going. There's a lot of transactions that can confirm where we are in case, heaven forbid, some crazy homicide happens and you have a bunch of wacky people pointing fingers at you like they did Maddie's boyfriend, Jake. He had nothing to do with it. And of course, the timestamp is really important too, because I remember people blaming him. He could have made it from Boise, to Maddie's house. So there were all kinds of crazy rumors. She had been with Blank and some of the other friends every day since the homicides. I'm sure they really gathered together to grieve. She had seen Blank, and others since the homicides. I know at some point in here she's going to talk about Emily and Hunter, because even though the names are redacted, I know she's talking about them because she mentions them going to Mexico. And that's one thing we learned in the documentary or the Idaho 4 book, either or both, how Emily and Hunter at one point went off to Mexico just to get away from it all, and how Ethan's mom was so nice to them and had Emily and Hunter come out to their lake house just to get time away. So Monday, November 14th, Blank and others had come over after they arrived back in Boise. Her parents met her in Boise and went back home with them. The last social media post she had seen with any of the victims was a picture of Maddie on Kaylee's Snapchat story. They were at the grub truck together. I don't think we've ever seen that Snapchat story. She knew the person in the video at the grub truck was, I'll call him Hoodie Guy. She did not know him well. Hoodie Guy had a girlfriend the whole time Blank was going to school at the University of Idaho. She knew Hoodie Guy's girlfriend, I guess, better than him. Hoodie Guy and that girlfriend are not dating anymore. Blank lived at the Brown Apartments near the victims. She heard a rumor that he has anger issues. She heard another rumor that he hunts. So if they're indeed talking about Hoodie Guy, I remember all these rumors from the beginning. I know people love sleuthing, and of course sometimes web sleuths, they really solve crimes. But internet sleuths, when this case started, they were digging into so many different people, and they were digging through social media from certain guys, and if the guy just had any kind of hunting photos, any kind of penchant for knives, some people were just blaming them outright, too directly. When she was up in Moscow during homecoming, she went to the victim's house, but did not go inside. The last time she was in the victim's house was December 2021. Different girls were living in the house then. She knew where each of the victims' rooms were in the house. The room near the kitchen was Dylan's. The room by the bathroom upstairs, but still on the main level, was Xana's. The room downstairs when you first walk in was Bethany's. The room next to Bethany was vacant, but Blank was paying rent. So someone was paying rent for a vacant room, and I wonder if that room belonged to the woman who we read earlier, who had the creeped out feeling about the house, felt it wasn't safe. didn't come back. Already I've read on social media someone saying, oh, what kind of college student is going to pay rent for a place and not live there? It could happen. It is possible. We don't know if their share of the house rent, mortgage, whatever, split between 6 people. It might not have been that expensive. We don't know who might have been paying for the rent, where she was making her income. It might have been very affordable. The people on social media or whatever who are saying, oh, nobody would pay for, a room in that house, paying the rent and not live there. Yes, it's very possible someone would do that, especially a person who had agreed. Perhaps she had told, Kaylee, I'll be back, save my room. And then she started feeling like I'm not coming back, but perhaps she still had committed to paying, I don't know what, through December. We don't have details. The room upstairs with the sliding glass door and the balcony was Kaylee's. So I didn't think about that. Kaylee's room, that big room, had a sliding glass door and a big old balcony. We know Maddie had a balcony too, but perhaps Maddie's room, I'll have to look at photos and put them here. I believe Maddie just had a window. The tiny room upstairs, there we are. The tiny room upstairs with just a window to the balcony was Maddie's. See, this is why, again, I want to request interviews. Maybe I'll understand it better hearing it from the horse's mouth instead of hearing it the way the detective interpreted it and wrote it. It says the tiny room upstairs with just a window to the balcony was Maddie's. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Just a window in front of the balcony, no sliding glass door. Maddie is the only one who lived there for 2 years, and she stayed in that room the whole time. When she lived in Moscow, everyone used the front door to go in and out of that house. So that's a little bit different than what the other 1122 King Road occupant said earlier, who, felt shaky in the house. She admitted it was an open door policy. People were in and out. People used the front door, and a lot of people, the close friends, used the sliding glass door. This woman is saying in 2021, everyone used the front door. So many redactions. I think this is Emily and Hunter, but whoever they're interviewing apparently got information from Emily and Hunter. They received a call, and by the next morning, blank and blank were called by blank and blank the next morning. So maybe one couple, whoever they're interviewing, might have been called by Emily and Hunter. I believe they mean Hunter went upstairs and saw some of what happened. At the time of the interview, Emily and Hunter were in Mexico. That's how I know who they're talking about, because I know Emily and Hunter were in Mexico, and Hunter definitely was the one who went upstairs first and saw some of the carnage, unfortunately. I believe this says she thought Dylan and Bethany called Emily and Hunter because they were a little worried. Their other roommates weren't answering. Dylan thought she had heard someone in the house the night before and wasn't sure if that person was still in the house. During her time living in Moscow, it wasn't uncommon for someone to walk into the wrong house drunk or to hear people up and moving around, in which case you might call someone you know instead of the police. So this woman is backing up basically Dylan's story or Dylan's thinking, Dylan's logic. Any one of us might automatically call 911 if some stranger's in our house. But in this college town, in that particular house, this woman is saying, yeah, somebody drunk could walk into the wrong house, or you could hear, someone wandering around. So you might feel more at ease to call a friend instead of cops. Kind of like that story in the book where Ava down the street on King Road, when she heard someone October 14th, walking up her stairs and trying the doorknob, she did not call the police first. She called some guy or a friend or something saying, hey, did you just try my door? Okay, so Dylan told someone she heard Kaylee playing music earlier that night at approximately 4 a.m. So here's the music story again. She ended up going down to Bethany's room because Bethany was the only one who answered. They had been drinking all day the day before, and Dylan was a little freaked out that someone might be in the house. So that contributes also. It was Friday, was that party, the ball, and then Saturday was game day, so it was like Friday drinking, Saturday drinking. Sunday, everyone probably just normally would just crash out or sleep in or do whatever. And Dylan is still in her mind thinking, okay, someone could have really been in the house, but did I dream it? Did I, have this crazy drunken vision or something? She does not believe any of the victims used drugs. Maddie and Xana were servers at the Mad Greek, which is closed now, by the way. Kaylee was about to finish school. Now, here comes the Winco story again. Since the homicides, someone told her a story about Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana going to Winco. Kaylee went in. Kaylee felt like someone was following her, lurking around. This freaked Kaylee out enough to get back in the car and lock the doors immediately. A man then tried to open the car door. This happened approximately 2 to 3 weeks prior to the interview. The part that's weird to me is when they say this man tried to open the car door. If it truly was a guy just innocently liking Kaylee and following her around, why would he come out and try to open her car door? That's very weird. Since the homicides, blank and blank told a story of Kaylee going outside to take Murphy, her dog, to urinate. There was a man watching her from the dumpster near the house. There is the dumpster story again. Kaylee called someone to see when she was going to be home. She did not know a timeline of when this event took place or what time of day this took place. The weekend prior to the homicides, Maddie had flown down to Boise, and Blank and Maddie spent time together. Maddie never mentioned anything about this. So I don't know, never mentioned anything about what? The dumpster event? We still don't know when the dumpster event took place. But I do believe Kaylee really could sense someone watching her. I'm sure she knew the difference between, that guy, maybe he thinks I'm pretty, he's going a little too far, following me around this store, but then trying to open her car door, that's really weird. And then the whole dumpster issue, scary. She was told, she believed by Kaylee's sister, someone woke up the morning after the homicides with 16 missed calls from Kaylee and Maddie. So that had to be Jack. So Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, Jack, had all those missed calls, which occurred at approximately 3 a.m. Kaylee had called approximately 10 times, and Maddie had called approximately 6 times. So we knew that pretty early on. We had heard information possibly from Olivia. I believe Kaylee's sister was the one who gave the interview and let us know that Jack had received all these missed calls from Kaylee and a few from Maddie. There were also text messages sent to him saying things like, "Bro, what the F? Wake up." Kaylee was known for calling a lot of times consecutively when she wanted to contact someone. Neither Kaylee nor Maddie would call him instead of the police for help. So I guess they're saying Kaylee was just calling because she wanted to talk to her ex. If at that point, they needed true help, Kaylee and Maddie would have called the police. Jack and Kaylee had dated previously. They were currently broken up, but good friends. And blank, blank, blank. She is frustrated by the rumors and random accusations on social media. I'm sure. So that interview ended at 1:27. So it has audio recording. So that's a good half an hour interview with this woman. On to the next. Alrighty, we've already made it up to page 54. On November 18th, 2022, there's another interview with this 21-year-old white female. She has some interesting things to say about the door codes and the sliding door. So she lived at some avenue in Moscow, and her residence was in front of Maddie's house. Very close. She was no longer in a sorority, but she lived with some of the sorority members. What's really fascinating is this weird feeling this woman's going to have. So many people talked about weird feelings in the documentary. If you watch the Idaho 4, it's like people could feel the evil lurking. Even Hunter, not Hunter Chapin, but Hunter Johnson, he spoke of doing things he had never done, like getting up and locking his door, just something he'd never done. This woman's talking about a weird feeling. Okay, so she knew Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana. She had met Ethan, but did not know him well. She was closest with Maddie. She lived with blank and blank previously. She went to Maddie and Kaylee's residence often and was with them often. She did not go out during the day on game day, Saturday, November 12th. She did not attend the daytime party, but she saw them at the bar that night. She went to the corner club with her friend, and she found Maddie and Kaylee while she was there. She spent most of her time at the corner club with Maddie and Kaylee. She was supposed to go home with them, but she had a weird feeling. So she got a ride home with a freshman Greek life designated driver. She left at approximately 1:15 a.m. I think this is the girl that people are saying really dodged a bullet. Look at this. She was supposed to go home with them, but she had a weird feeling. So she got a ride home with a freshman Greek life designated driver. She left at approximately 1:15 a.m. But this is the part that's really weird. She was supposed to go home with them, but she had a weird feeling. Wow. Can't our God protect us from so many things. Maybe she didn't know why she had a weird feeling. And I'm sure she had fun. She probably loved hanging out with Maddie and Kaylee. And how often do, especially college kids, I don't know, I guess the guys do this too, but girls generally sometimes like to have a lot of sleepovers. Like, sure, let's sleep over and do our makeup, try on clothes, make videos, whatever. And there was no other reason she didn't go home with them besides having this weird feeling. But she speaks about a weird man at the bar. He was pushing her at the bar. Maddie introduced her to the man. So I don't know if they're talking about Hoodie Guy or some other man. The man was following Maddie, Blank, and Kaylee around at the bar. Maddie told her she had classes with the man. The man kept grabbing girls' butts and he grabbed someone's stomach. He spat at them and others, and Blank was told the man was kicked out of the bar. He never said much. He seemed off and not just drunk. So I still don't know who this man was who was kicked out. Maybe we've read his interview already. Maybe he was being very obnoxious and blackout drunk. Anyway, when she got home, she went to her friend's apartment, also in the Blank, which was directly across from Maddie's residence. She did not hear or see Maddie or Kaylee come home, but she knew they went and got food at Grub Truck after they left the corner club. She saw Kaylee post on Snapchat with Maddie at the Grub Truck, so a lot of people saw that snap. She went home to her apartment at 3:30 to 3:45 a.m. So we don't know what she ended up doing. This woman left the corner club at 1:15, and she did not go home with Maddie and Kaylee. But it's like a couple of hours missing. Oh, there it is. When she got home, she went to her friend's apartment, like I just read, directly across from Maddie's residence. So that's what's confusing me. It's saying when she got home, she went to her friend's apartment. But technically, I guess she didn't really go home first. She went to her friend's apartment. Then it says she went home to her apartment. Maybe she went home to the group of apartments where they both lived, I'm assuming. Went to her friend's apartment. Then she went home to her own apartment around 3:30 to 3:45 a.m. There were not a lot of people arriving home around that time, except for a few people belonging to some frat who were staying in the apartment where she was hanging out. She knew there was speculation about someone. Someone texted someone at approximately 3:04 a.m. to see what she was doing. Blank grew up with Blank. She has heard about a stalker, but she heard it could have been for any of the girls in that house. She has heard about a man that used to follow Kaylee on her walks with her dog and also had been seen around the dumpster. Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana did not use drugs. So this is according to her perspective. Other people have talked about Xana dabbling in some things. She spent a lot of time at Maddie, Kaylee's, and Xana's house. If she needed to borrow something, Maddie would text her the door code, but they would often leave their back door open. So she would just walk around the back and go in often. So this is saying that sliding glass door was often open. So Maddie gave this woman, her friend, the door code to the front door, but this woman saying, look, the slider was often open. Usually people who went to the victim's residence were known by other people in the group. Blank doesn't usually go to house parties anymore, but Xana and Ethan still attended them regularly because they were underage and could not go to the bar. She didn't think any of them had any enemies. She went to high school with Blank, not in the same grade, and she knew Blank through Greek life. She did not know either of them well. She knew Maddie had a boyfriend, Jake. Now this confused me a little bit. She knew Kaylee had a previous boyfriend, Blank. So I thought she was talking about Jack here. But then she goes on to say, and the current boy Kaylee was seeing was Blank. Blank was really nice, and he and Kaylee dated for approximately 6 years. So we know Kaylee dated Jack for about 6 years. So I don't know who the previous boyfriend she's referencing is. Kaylee had to have been very young, whoever that guy was. Blank left the corner club before blank. She recalled from previous years there were people on the offender registry in the area. So this woman's interview ended at 3:27 p.m. So we can see the complete audio recording if we get it. So the interview started at about 3:01, ended 3:27, nearly half an hour. I'm glad they were able to get so many people to come in and talk to them, because you never know who might have had really detailed, good information. Okay, I was just peeking forward a little bit. There's going to be neighborhood canvases and everything, and of course more interviews. But I think I'll stop here in this video with her. This is kind of like the weird feeling video. So many people had so many weird feelings. They knew something was off that night. It wasn't just this woman. It was also Hunter. Other people had strange feelings that night. Maybe that's just the kind of evil that Bryan Kohberger brought into the atmosphere. When we pick back up on page 56, and since this is a 556-page document, we only have 500 more pages to go. I wanted to try and get 100 pages in each time, but that video might be way too long. So let's stop here and pick up next time on page 56. Thanks for watching.